I want to share with you some numbers that aren't great numbers, but I also want us to shift our attention to where we're going, the work that we're doing, as well as what I believe local communities should be focused on as well, and give you a bigger picture. So with that, I'm going to switch over to share screen. And all right. So when the Georgia Chamber, when this pandemic started, we made our decision really to do three things. One was to focus on advocating for businesses at the federal and state level like we do every day. The second is to be a clearinghouse of information for businesses and local chambers around the state. And the third piece was to start early, focusing on recovery. And at the time, it was just recovery. And as we've moved forward and this has prolonged itself, we've realized that this issue of resiliency has become much more important. And so a few weeks ago, we launched our Resiliency and Recovery Initiative, and we'll kind of go into some of those details. But let me try to explain to you, because in my mind, it helps to know where we are in a process, right? I think businesses tend to think this way. Tell me where we are and where we're going, and then I can figure it out, and I can take the appropriate, risk and opportunities that I need to. And so when you look back at the last several months of our lives, stage one was really the response, right? It was when healthcare management ramped up so that we could treat patients of COVID-19. Government responded so that they could test people to see if they had it. And critical industry and services like our power companies, our banks, they ramped up their efforts in a new model so that they could continue to deliver services, our grocery stores. And you really did see what free enterprise could do working with government, working with healthcare. So we've passed that stage now. We've got those things established. We know we can continue to treat people, test people. So now we're in what I call stage two, which is reemergence, right? This is where the government continues their mitigation efforts, which includes contact tracing, which includes continuing to figure out how to manage through a very difficult environment. Businesses now have started to rebound and reopen and reemerge. And I believe that this is the time, and I think this is very, very important for every business in this country. I don't care what your company does, you are in the health and wellness business now. You have to take care of your employees, you have to take care of your customers, your clients. And so there's a level of corporate responsibility, of corporate citizenship that comes with businesses taking more of the role of protecting people and protecting those people that we want to do business with. We're also in this reemergent stage where the issue of individual responsibility, personal responsibility, becomes more important. Whether or not you think you can get it or not, your lack of wearing a mask, your lack of social distancing, it does impact your peers and your families and others. And so this is the stage we're at right now, this kind of reemergence of the economy, the reemergence of individuals, and government trying to find a path forward. Stage three, we're not there yet. We don't know when we're going to get there yet, all right? But it's when society adapts to this new normal. It's when our education systems learn to adapt over the long term. It's when government shifts their focus more and more toward the recession response, which we're starting to see now little by little at the federal and state level. And it's really the emergence of what I've called kind of a post-COVID economy, where things are impacted more, and you'll see this as I go through these slides. The economy is really different than what it's been before. So that's kind of where we are now. But obviously the economic impact, we all know the horrible personal toll this has taken on individuals and families all over around the world. And we're just now starting to understand the economic impact. Just to put it in perspective here in Georgia for you, February of this year was the all-time unemployment low in the history of the whole state of Georgia. If you wanted a job, by gosh, you had a job. Those folks that were unemployed generally didn't have the skill sets, or they didn't want to work at that point. And there are that group of folks. I've always heard labor commissioners say that there's around 2.5% to 3% of the population that just doesn't want to work and won't work for a variety of reasons. Fast forward to April, and we were at 11.9% And that number is probably going to go up in May. That is the highest unemployment record in Georgia's history. We've never seen unemployment as high as 11.9%. Even during the recession a few, 10 years ago, we were at about 10.4%. And so this really has impacted everyday hardworking Georgians, probably folks that like I know, that have been put out of work. So here in the state, we've seen that. But let's look at a couple of industry sectors in particular. I get asked all the time on press calls, which industries do we see hit the worst? And obviously, it's been retail and hospitality. But we're still trying to figure out exactly how bad that impact is. Let me share with you a few statistics that if you're in these sectors, will keep you a little bit up at night. So from a retail standpoint, we've had 250,000 closures, temporary closures of retail storefronts in the U.S. in the last 3 months. 250,000 businesses have just said, I'm closing the door, no one's coming in and out. Now, you expect those numbers to recover. You're starting to see people reopen their shops right now, and that's fantastic to see that. But here's the kicker. What we're going to see, economically, we were in a transition that was going to see a pretty big impact to the retail sector over the next 10 years. Well, that's been compressed now. Over the next 5 years, we're going to see 100,000 permanent retail closures in America. So those people that are in the apparel, electronics, grocery, furniture, you can see the numbers there of predicted closures over the next 5 years. This idea of accelerating what's happening in the economy, I'm going to continue to talk about that because you're going to see that throughout this slideshow, that what was going to take us 10 years is now going to take us 5 or 3 or even 2 years. And so I do have a lot of worry. A lot of these retail companies that we know out there are not going to reopen. Some of them are national brands, whether that, Pier 1 just announced they're never reopening again. You've seen Macy's saying they're shutting a high percentage of their stores. Kohl's is going to shut a high percentage of their stores permanently. So we're going to see more and more of these large retail closures, which obviously have an impact on our lower skilled workers and our unemployed as well. So retail is really taking it pretty hard right now, mom and pop shops as well. And then obviously the hospitality industry has been just rocked. You've already had 1 million jobs lost in the hotel industry. A recent survey, and this was the 1st of May, of different CEOs around the world. This is a global number. 41% of all hospitality CEOs in the world said that they didn't know if they would ever reopen. That's higher than any other industry sector that's out there. And then lastly, you see our restaurants, and God bless them, they've been probably hit the worst. You had a 90% decline of revenue in all restaurants in the country in March, 90%. And so these numbers are just absolutely brutal. And what they do is they impact those employees that are most at risk, right? Those folks that have the lower skills, might be working 3 or 4 different jobs. They're part of the gig economy. They're really taking this on the chin. And I think you probably all know that, but seeing the numbers, I think, really does put it in perspective. So if we know the economy is bad, we know that we're in a recession right now. 68% of economists tell us that recession is going to be a swoosh shape. You still hear people talking about a V or a U or a W. We'll get used to the Nike swoosh, right? So it's a sharp decline, which we've hit the bottom, and a very slow, long recovery that could last. I think the head of the Federal Reserve said you're looking at least a 2-year recovery, if not longer. And then obviously certain parts of the economy are going to take even longer than that to recover. So where do we go from here? Well, we obviously start focusing on resiliency, recovery, and we also look at those industry sectors that are going to grow. And we focus on those at our community level. What we're going to see is about a 21% increase in non-store retail. So e-commerce, you need to be, if you've got a small business and you don't have an e-commerce platform, you're going to lose. You're going to fall behind. My next door neighbor owns a small store. And I asked her the other day, I said, I know you haven't been able to open your store. How are you surviving right now? And she says, we've switched to an online model. We get everything that comes here. I go into the store once a week. We package everything up, send it out. So we know non-store retail is going to grow. We know anything dealing with cybersecurity is going to grow incredibly fast. You saw a huge cyber attack just yesterday that hit a tremendous number of computers around the world. We know that this industry sector, and it's very strong in Georgia, a lot of our colleges are offering degrees in it. There's growth there. As a service growth is going to grow just absolutely tremendously. This is an industry right now that's maybe 25 million a year. And the next 5 years, it's going to grow to $340 billion a year. This is basically, instead of paying for things, these are things that you're going to just use as a service. And so a lot of the platform-based, the Ubers, the Lyfts, a lot of the delivery service models, those are going to have tremendous growth impact. And then obviously, as you can imagine, biotech growth, and Georgia's got a great footprint in the biotech industry. This is just going to move that so fast and so much more quickly. It's interesting in the biotech space. It's a little bit, Miss Audrey, like the energy sector. You didn't see a tremendous amount of venture capital investment in energy or in biotech over the last 10 years because it takes so long to return your dollars on those investments. Now businesses realize, wait, we can expedite, we can move forward, we can come up with a vaccine in 2 years versus 6 years. So you're going to see a tremendous economic growth in biotech. And a lot of that too is because you're going to see a lot of reshoring from people bringing back pharmaceutical production from China and other places and back onshore it. So a lot of opportunities there in the economy, even though things are not looking great right now. So what do we do as communities and as states? Well, we at the Georgia Chamber, we are looking at this resiliency and recovery effort in 3 stages. First of all, we have a task force with the U.S. Chamber and all the state chambers around the country focused on how we reopen the country, how we manage this going forward, and what we look at from a stimulus standpoint at the federal level. And we've been talking to our senators and congressmen around the clock for the past several months on these issues, and we've got a good platform and we're making good progress there. We've got our resiliency and recovery task force here at the Chamber, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And then what we believe is really absolutely critical is that every chamber is part of a regional effort that is focused on resiliency and recovery in their own communities. Because we all know that you have a unique economy, has its own unique things you need to deal with. And we're seeing chambers around the state set up, not just here's what I'm doing in my own community, but the regional approach. And so I do think it's two-folded there, and I'm sure that that's part of what you're focused on with the Clayton County Chamber. But I just want to encourage you to do that, do it as part of the region, but to also feed up the issues that you find to us that we can then take to the Georgia General Assembly. And then those things that you share with us that are federal, we'll feed those up our pipeline. This is part of the Chamber family. This is when the Chamber does what it does best. It works together, it coordinates, and it helps grow not just your own individual business in your community, but the state. And at the federal level, we need it as well. So we've got all these different areas. What does it look like from a tactical standpoint? Well, we believe that as you emerge into this post-COVID economy, you're really looking at kind of 4 pillars of the economy, right? This is what's going to really drive economic growth as we move through the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, health and wellness, much more investment in our hospitals, in our insurance, in our biotech development, in our pharmaceuticals, in reshoring, in changing the supply lines, a lot of investment in health and wellness. So if you're in that space, it's rough right now. It's going to be tough for a little bit, but there's a lot of opportunities out there. Senior care is going to change dramatically as we move forward through this. And so I'll tell you, really focus in these areas. Sustainability and resiliency is going to be that second tier. And so green energy development, building out our nuclear power plants, businesses investing in cybersecurity and new systems and teleworking, all of those things are going to make your business more resilient in the long term. It's going to be a cottage industry here. I think what we've learned is we were all caught by surprise by this, even though experts have been telling us for 5 years to expect a pandemic that would shut down the economy. We now know that we've got to be better prepared. There was a horrible article this morning that said there are probably 20 or 30 more pandemics that are out there that are bubbling that could move around the world. And so businesses really have to spend the time to be more resilient in what they do and to think about sustainability and how your business is sustainable, not just the environment, but your business as well. And so a big shift in investments in both of those areas. The third kind of pillar of this new economy is digital disruption. Listen, we've all seen virtual learning, telemedicine, e-commerce, all these things, right, that we're going to slowly change over the next 10 years have now been pushed down into an accelerated fashion. So you've got this idea that we're all going to have a digital footprint, a digital focus on business. If you're not disrupting your business, someone else is. And so you really got to think about what this looks like and how you adopt these new technologies. And then that fourth area is this accelerated innovation. A lot of this stuff was not supposed to happen for a while. I love, there was a report this weekend, I think it was by Deloitte, who said that they were tracking 3 years of innovation that have now taken place in 3 months. And so one of the concerns here is that I'll tell you one of the things we were tracking. We were tracking the rise of artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence, robotics, cobotics, all these things were supposed to take about 10 years to come to fruition. We're now seeing that some of that acceleration could take place in 10 months versus 10 years. Here's the negative of that at the highest level. We were going to lose 39 million American jobs to artificial intelligence over the next 10 years. That's going to be compressed now into the next 3 to 4 years. These are 39 million Americans that generally have lower skills. Their jobs won't be coming back. This need to reskill them, upskill them is going to be absolutely incredible on our education system. And so if you're not investing in health and wellness, you're not looking at sustainability, you're not looking at opportunities and disruption, you're not looking at innovation, you're going to miss out on what this economy looks like. And so, those four, we know that there might be other things that arise, new economic revolutions that come out of this, but we know for sure those four are going to drive economic growth and development as we move through the next several years. So at the Georgia Chamber level, what are we focused on? Well, we've asked our initiative, our task force, we've got about 50 to 60 companies that are part of our recovery and resiliency effort, to really look at these 6 areas. Number one, how do we help businesses in Georgia become more resilient? How do we help them build their systems, make sure they've got the investments that they need, the right hiring, the right safety protocols in place? I told a group last week, I said, I'm sure you've got a new business plan about how you're going to operate in a different economy. You need a health plan as well. And I can't stress that enough, is how you're going to be more resilient. And so we're looking at best practices, policy strategies to help become more resilient. We've also got to look at how we continue to grow innovation in Georgia and deal with those areas I just talked about, those new pillars, and how we invest in infrastructure. And I'll tell you, when I use the term infrastructure, I mean energy, I mean healthcare, I mean roads and bridges and railways. We had a great call last week with the head of the Georgia Ports Authority and the chairman of DOT, or the commissioner of DOT. And we talked about the fact that at the end of this, the Ports Authority is still going to grow a little bit this year, but they've really been hit hard. Our gas tax collection in Georgia has obviously gone very low, but yet we still need to invest about $2.5 billion a year just in roads, bridges, rails, and ports, and our airports as we move through the next 30 years. And so we know that there's an opportunity there for stimulus and growth, but we've got to have a plan of how we do that. We've also got to increase the number of patents that we develop in Georgia, the amount of research and development that goes on in our state, if we want long-term economic mobility and success. We've also got to focus on how small businesses survive. A lot of them, when this started, it's interesting, we did a survey this first week of the pandemic, and something like 41% of Georgia businesses said they had less than 14 days of operating capital. We're way past that now, and so many of them didn't get PPP. They didn't get some of the access to those other federal funds, and they're never going to reopen. How do you help those businesses that are open now survive? And then how do you address a couple of other issues that have been problematic for Georgia? One is the fact that our minority small business startup rate is one of the highest in the country, but also has the highest failure rate and the lowest venture capital rate. And so how do we help particularly minority businesses get the investment that they need? How do we help young people start their own businesses? What does that look like from a statewide standpoint, and what does that look like at the local level? We've also got to look at rural Georgia, and I know I'm talking to Clayton County, and rural Georgia seems like it's 1,000 miles away, but Miss Audrey can tell you because she's been there. Rural Georgia was just recovering from the last economic recession, and now they're hit with this, and their recovery is going to be brutal. But I'll tell you, if you like to eat, you need rural Georgia to be successful, right? Because they're going to grow what you eat, they transport it, they prepare it, they get it to the city. But I also understand that a lot of the issues that rural communities deal with, our urban communities deal with as well, whether it's education, whether it's housing. And so we're going to have an effort focused on those rural communities. We've also really got to look at talent and upskilling. I just told you how many jobs we're going to lose, how many people are unemployed already, helping them get the skills they need to be successful, helping businesses understand how to train people differently. And it might be as simple as how you train people to come back to work right now, but I'm thinking more long-term in the skills that you're going to need. And then what is that upskilling and what does the change of the economy look like for K through 12 education? What does it look like for our colleges? I talked to one of our college presidents last week at great length. And he's part of the task force that's looking at how Georgia colleges reopen in the fall. And I said, well, I figure, Mr. President, you got kind of three strategies, right? One, we're all online. One, the kids come back. Two, it's some hybrid. He goes, no. He goes, I got those three, but I've also got 10 other scenarios. He goes, that's how detailed this is. He goes, we're running a city here, and we've got to look at what happens if the kids come back and have an outbreak. What if we have an outbreak at this fraternity house? What if we have an outbreak here? What do we do about, mixed learning? I mean, it's just all these different things that you're trying to figure out your business. Well, the future of talent is trying to figure out what their world looks like as well. College football notwithstanding, just how we educate our kids is going to look differently. And again, this accelerated change, this use of virtual learning, my kids, we're in Fayette County. We had a survey the other day from the school system saying, what do you think about these different delivery models? And one was you come for in-class education or instruction 2 days a week, and the other 3 days you actually are working from home. Now, that might sound, okay, well, that's innovative, that's a great idea, but think of what that does to working parents. What are they supposed to do on those other 3 days? And so all this has to be thought out, and we really need to spend our time doing it. And then the other area that we're asking our task force to look at is what does inclusiveness look like in economic mobility? We're so worried right now about what the future looks like for individuals, for businesses and governments, but we need to worry about what it looks like for individuals too. And I'll give you an example. If the state of Georgia, as we know now, are having to cut their budgets by 14%, most of what they do, most of those services go to the people that need those, right? Their senior care, their health care, their education, they're people that are out of work. Well, if we have less state revenue, that's less resources to them, which puts more pain on people. And so we have to think about those perspectives. And then we also have to help businesses understand now's the time to help grow people, invest in people, helping people move up the economic ladder out of poverty into prosperity. And how do we, as we do this, become more intentionally inclusive in the long run? And so that's kind of our focus. Now, individual communities in your community might have 5 different things to look at, but you've got to have some specific, things that are going to drive the long-term economic prosperity of your community to look at. And these are the 6 that we're focused on right now. Our view is, what do we need to send to the federal level? What do we need to take to the Georgia General Assembly, which will start meeting in about 2 weeks? And then what do we need to focus on for next year once we have a better picture of what the economy is going to look like? Now, I've got one last slide, and then I'll open it up page for questions. But I do think it's important to know what people are thinking. We were in the field with a poll just 2 weekends ago now. And I think it's remarkable at how much agreement there is between Republicans, independents, and Democrats right now, which usually you can't get any agreement in a political year on anything. But overwhelmingly, 93% of everyone we surveyed said focus on the recovery. 92% said focus on health and wellness. So it's a virtual tie right there. What happens to our kids and education is obviously important. People are very concerned about their taxes going up at a time where they don't have, money to pay anything right now. Retraining, upskilling is very high. Infrastructure investment, legal immigration reform is high on people's minds. And then liability protection. The number one issue we have from businesses right now, and I spent so much time Friday and Saturday on this, was if I reopen, can I be sued? We had 777 lawsuits last week in the U.S. alone, just on people suing businesses. You don't know if I got the coronavirus when I went to your business or not. I didn't wear a mask. I was supposed to. I got it. I'm going to sue you on this. This is a pretty big issue, and one we're asking the General Assembly to work on next year. So lastly, I'll just tell you, as part of the Chamber Federation and Chamber Alliance, not only do you get the resources Paige provides for you, but we have started a recovery and resiliency webinar series. We're actually doing one, I believe, next week on consumer confidence and what consumers are asking for in order to go back into businesses, which I think is important. Our town hall series we do every Tuesday and Thursday. This Thursday will be Dr. Toomey talking about contract tracing. And then we've also started these resiliency roundtables. We did our first one last week with the heads of the 3 biggest studios in Georgia, talking about how the movie industry comes back. Tomorrow on Wednesday, we're hosting one with the Braves and Six Flags and others to talk about what hospitality looks like. And so every week we have a resiliency roundtable with industry leaders that you're invited to participate in. I'm sure you've been getting those from Paige. So that's where we are. I'm going to stop sharing now and answer questions. I know I went through a lot of information really quick, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a picture of where we are today.
Chris, thank you so much. It's a plethora of great information. I'm sure people were taking notes. We have recorded this, as Paige mentioned in the chat, but if you're like me, you were feverishly taking notes, not only for the Chamber, but for our own businesses. So thank you for continuing to support Georgians, and Clayton County definitely feels that. And we want the Chamber here to be a part of that resiliency and recovery as well. We did have some questions that were posed to us via email this weekend. And so I'm going to real quick, I know that we got started a little bit later, but we want to be able to answer some of these. One of them, Chris, is directly related to some larger businesses here in Clayton County. And it says, Clayton County is home to Hartsfield Jackson and Delta Airlines. How do you think their revenue decline will affect our community, and what can we do to help? For example, any advocacy opportunities, or you want to address those 2 large, really Georgian institutions that are right here in Clayton County? Sure.
It's brutal. Let's just be honest. I mean, I think all of you guys know that. We've heard from a couple of airport vendors who've said that they're going to go out of business. A lot of those are headquartered there in Clayton County. Delta, we're happy to see, and my chairman's the number 2 at Delta this year, so we're happy to see them start having flights again. I'm sure that they would want me to tell you it's safe to fly, go fly. I don't know if a lot of people are comfortable with that yet, but anything that you can do to help advocate for, when you look at everything from property tax abatements to federal legislation, state legislation on the gas tax issue, again, jet fuel tax issue, any of those things, I would just tell you stay in contact with Delta, with the airport, see what they need. The good news is in the long run, we're still going to be the busiest airport in the world. We're still going to need to invest out there. That's not going to change a bit. The good news is Georgia has a strong, strong economic foundation. We're not like we were 10 years ago when we were too heavy on construction, we were too heavy on banking, and those sectors shrunk and it hurt us over the long term. We're at a very different place than we've been before. But I'll just tell you, anything that you can think to do to alleviate any of those pressure points for your businesses at the airport or like the Deltas of the world, helping their employees, it's going to pay off in the long run. But I will tell you, you should expect a significant shock to your tax revenue system as you look at the last 3 months. And I'm sure anybody from the city or the county that's on here has already seen those numbers. those are probably going to still be negative as you go through the next couple of months here. So I think you just need to be prepared to ride it out, but think about those construction projects and anything you can do to spread the message.
Thanks, Chris. One other one is you've addressed this as far as like being resilient for the future, but how do you suggest, or speaking on behalf of the Georgia Chamber, would you advise a small business to plan for a potential reoccurrence? So this fall or winter, we've rebounded here in the summer. We're all banking on that and working towards it. But if we have a recurrence in the winter, and you're a small business here in Georgia, any specifics or a short answer for that? I guess it's tough, I know, but would love to hear your opinion on that.
It is, Ben, but listen, here's the thing: you're not going to be surprised in the fall. If you are, shame on you, right?
Sure.
This is a free market. This is free enterprise. You didn't know it before. The federal government's giving you the ability to apply for the PPP, for the emergency loans. You've got some of those other support mechanisms that are out there. Those are probably going to go away at some point. You're going to look at a bigger stimulus effort from Congress in June and July. But you ought to plan right now. That's what resiliency is all about. What are you going to do online? How do you shift? You ought to have your book ready now so that you can continue to operate. What I believe is going to happen is if you see those outbreaks, is more of turning down the dial in those communities where those outbreaks are instead of maybe a statewide, which means your business should be able to continue to operate. And the great news is, with exception of 20,000 Georgia businesses, Governor Kemp allowed every other business in Georgia to keep operating using those minimum basic operating procedures. If you didn't do that, shame on you. I had a business the other day said, well, I don't feel comfortable reopening. And I said, well, then nobody's making you reopen. But your competitors are, and that's what the free market does. And so you're going to have an impact there. So I just say be prepared and use this as an opportunity to do that.
We have one last question from Erica Rocker-Wills from our Development Authority, and I unmuted you, Erica, so I'll let you go ahead and ask that if you can.
Thanks, Erica.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, super. Thank you, Chris, for this just incredible, robust presentation. I do have a question on the matter of business interruption insurance, that businesses have. And, I've heard from merchants that, after paying a premium for years, like this is like the biggest business interruption ever, yet it's not covered because of policy law or whatever the verbiage is. Viruses and bacteria are excluded. And so in this talk that I heard that the legislature in New York and New Jersey, they're going to address this to have specifically pandemics included in the policy under business interruption. It no longer just has to be damage to the building or something. Do you know, is the Georgia Chamber discussing that perhaps from a lobbying standpoint, and to see if the Georgia legislature will make those changes law with insurance as it pertains to business? I know it's kind of a twisted, complicated question, but I really perked up when I heard it discussed because, it is business interruption.
It is. And Erica, thanks for the question, the kind words. We had the Commissioner of Insurance on about 2 weeks ago, General King, and I specifically asked him this question. It was one of the number one issues from our members as well. He said that he was personally contacting every insurance company that does business in Georgia, telling them that his expectation was that they cover business interruption, and that if he needed legislation, he would pursue that. If he needed enforcement, he would pursue it. But that many of those companies were telling him that they were building out the structures now to come back and answer those claims. What he encouraged was that if you're having an issue with a provider right now, to reach out to his office, Georgia Department of Insurance, and provide that information directly to him. But he was hopeful that he didn't need legislation to address it, that he'd be able to work individually, and that's what we're sending people to his office now.
Wonderful. Great. I'll continue to follow that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Erica, and thank you, Chris. If you guys have questions that you'd like to ask in the future, go ahead and email the chamber. We will get those questions answered and get those back out in a newsletter form or via our electronic newsletter. But thank you, Chris, for you and your team just for providing tremendous support and leadership here in the state of Georgia. We're still the best place to do business in the country. We believe that. And we are proud for Clayton County to certainly be a part of that as well. So in recognition of you joining us this morning, making a contribution to Gigi's House on your behalf, they are continuing to support our community in tremendous ways, especially during this economic uncertainty. So thank you, and we'll make that happen this week for sure.
Thanks, Ben.
Adjourn this morning. We have some great door prizes. I mean, that's what the chamber is about. And Charisse, will you do the honors this morning before we log off?
Yes, so we do have 2 great prizes, Ben, and I know everyone understands the importance of having PPE and appropriate sanitizing supplies at your workplace. So we are so lucky to have Clorox right here in Clayton County, and they have donated a case of their wipes. So the names of you that pre-registered are in the cup, and Paige, as you can see, it's there. She's stirring it up over there. So Paige, I'm going to ask that you draw the first name.
All right. And we have, if I can read it, Lauren Whitaker from the City of Atlanta Department of Aviation. So we will make sure that Lauren gets the case of Clorox wipes.
Awesome.
Congratulations, Lauren. So we have one more. We look forward to seeing everyone live and in person sometime soon, especially at our signature events, including our 2020 golf tournament. It's still scheduled for August 31st. So the winner today will receive a complimentary whole sponsorship with your organization's name promoted throughout the day. Paige, and the winner is?
The winner is Kelly Hartz from Eclipse Network. So congratulations, Kelly, and we will get back in touch with you as well. And Kelly's waving at us, so I know she's still on. Thanks, Kelly.
All right. Congratulations, Kelly. So before we leave, we have a special presentation. Today is a special day for our fearless leader, Ben Casey. Today is Ben's birthday. So we would like to say, Ben, happy birthday. We wish you many more, and we do have a surprise for you because we like to see you blush.
Oh, this is terrible.
Ashley.
I turned 30 in time.
So Ben, can you hold up your cake a little bit so we can see what it looks like?
Terrible.
There we go.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate it.
we wish everyone to say happy birthday to Ben, blow out those candles and make a wish. And we thank you so much for being the leader that you are to this chamber.
Oh, thank y'all. That's very kind. And thank you, Charisse, and congratulations to our winners this morning. Thank you for connecting with us. And as we close, I'd like to again thank our presenting sponsor, SunTrust, now Truist, and our monthly sponsor, Georgia Power. Nick and Audrey, thank you for your leadership, not only on the chamber board, but in our community. And thank you for your companies. But please watch out for your inbox for upcoming learning and networking series opportunities through the Clayton County Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for hanging in there with us this morning as we had a few technical difficulties as we got started, but we're excited to still be in Clayton County. We're excited that business is still happening. We're excited for the rejuvenation of our economy here, and we're here to support you, and we're here to be a resource for you. So thank you to everybody. Thanks, Charisse, for embarrassing me this morning, and Paige, so appreciate it. Great to have everyone. We look forward to next month's Zoom and July being back in person together. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a great week. Take care.